At exactly 10:52 p.m. on April 24, 2021, the final message was sent from the phone of Dana Whitfield. A single letter. Just one character. One tiny symbol that would go on to haunt investigators, family members, and the entire town for years. Imagine getting a text so unlike the person you know, so chilling in its simplicity, that you instantly know something is wrong. That's exactly what happened here. For nearly 3 years, her family lived in unbearable silence, never knowing, never healing. As her brother once said, not knowing is worse than knowing, because how do you grieve when the story hasn't ended? Dana wasn't just another missing person. She was a 52-year-old mother of 5, a respected businesswoman, and a beloved neighbor in the quiet community of Lansbury County, Michigan. Everyone who knew her described her as radiant, kind, and unstoppable. And yet, she vanished into thin air. But here's the question that will keep you glued to this story. How does a woman with deep family roots, thriving businesses, and an entire community watching her life disappear without a trace? And what did her final text, just one single letter, really mean? Before I tell you the shocking truth, make sure you stick with me till the end of this video, because the twists in this case will leave you speechless. And trust me, you'll want to know how investigators finally uncovered what really happened to Dana Whitfield. On the morning of April 24, 2021, Dana Whitfield's day began like any other. She dropped her youngest daughter off at school, waved goodbye with that signature smile of hers, and then drove off in her silver SUV. Friends later said she seemed distracted, her eyes distant, her mind somewhere else. By noon, Dana met with her business partner at a local cafe. Witnesses described her as pleasant, but unusually quiet. She wasn't her lively self. Instead, she kept glancing at her phone, reading and rereading messages that seemed to unsettle her. Who was she texting, and why did her mood shift so dramatically after each notification? At 4:17 p.m., Dana stopped by her sister's house. They chatted briefly, but her sister recalls something chilling. Dana hugged her tighter than usual and whispered, "If anything happens, just know I love you." At the time, her sister brushed it off, thinking Dana was simply being emotional. But later, those words would feel like a final goodbye. On April 25, 2021, less than 12 hours after Dana Whitfield's final text, her sister called police to report her missing. At first, officers considered it a routine welfare check. After all, adults disappear voluntarily all the time, or so it seemed. But this case was different. When investigators entered Dana's home, they immediately sensed something was off. The house wasn't in disarray, but it wasn't exactly normal either. A half-finished cup of coffee sat on the kitchen counter. A pot of water boiled dry on the stove, its metallic bottom scorched. And in the living room, Dana's reading glasses were left neatly folded on the couch. Dana never went anywhere without them. The strangest detail, however, was the groceries. Bags were still in the car, untouched, as though she'd been interrupted while unloading. The perishables had begun to spoil. For investigators, this was the first chilling sign that Dana hadn't planned to leave. Her SUV was parked in the driveway, keys inside the house. Her purse and wallet were left on the counter. And her phone, dead by the time police tried to ping it, hadn't left the property since that mysterious final message. Neighbors were questioned, and one detail stood out. Around 11 p.m. the night before, a neighbor reported hearing a loud thud,
followed by what sounded like muffled voices. But when they looked outside, all they saw was Dana's porch light flicker, then go dark. Within hours, Dana's family grew frantic. Her children, especially the younger ones, couldn't understand why their mother hadn't come home. To them, it was unthinkable. Dana was their rock. She wouldn't just disappear. But the police had a different perspective. They began looking closely at Dana's estranged husband, Michael Whitfield. His alibi? He claimed he'd been home alone, watching television. But investigators immediately noticed inconsistencies in his timeline. Security camera footage from a gas station 3 miles away showed a car matching Michael's at 11:14 p.m., just minutes after Dana's phone went silent. As detectives pieced together her final hours, one unsettling theory began to form. Dana's disappearance wasn't random. It wasn't voluntary. It was deliberate. When detectives returned to Dana Whitfield's home with forensic experts, they began a slow, methodical sweep of every room. At first glance, the house looked normal, almost too normal, like someone had tried to erase any trace of struggle. But forensics has a way of seeing what the human eye cannot. In the garage, specialists used luminol, a chemical that reveals hidden traces of blood. What lit up under the glow was bone-chilling. Faint streaks and droplets, smeared in a pattern that suggested someone had tried to clean it. The blood matched Dana's DNA. That discovery shifted the investigation into high gear. This was no longer just a missing person case. It was a potential homicide. The most disturbing clue, however, wasn't the blood. It was a single strand of hair caught on the edge of a utility shelf. Forensic testing confirmed what Dana's family feared. It belonged to her. But there was something else. It had been yanked out at the root, consistent with a struggle. Detectives began to suspect that Dana had been attacked in her own garage, possibly as she returned from running errands that night. The unfinished groceries in the car suddenly made terrifying sense. And then came the neighbor's surveillance footage. At exactly 10:47 p.m., a blurry figure could be seen near Dana's driveway. Moments later, her garage light flickered on, then off. The quality was poor, but investigators noted the silhouette. Tall, broad-shouldered, and moving with a familiarity that suggested Dana knew this person. All eyes turned back to Michael Whitfield. His alibi was shaky. His marriage with Dana was crumbling, and now forensic evidence was pointing toward foul play. Still, police didn't want to move too fast. They needed stronger proof, something undeniable. And as they dug deeper into Michael's digital footprint, they would uncover a trail of secrets and lies that shattered his story completely.
Detectives knew that killers often betray themselves, not through what they say, but through what they do in the hours and days after a crime. Michael Whitfield was no exception. On paper, he was a grieving husband, telling neighbors he had no idea where Dana went, but surveillance showed otherwise. Less than 12 hours after Dana's disappearance, Michael was caught on camera at a rural gas station buying industrial-strength trash bags, bleach, and gloves. When asked later, he insisted it was for spring cleaning. Investigators weren't buying it. Then came the digital evidence. Forensic experts pulled location data from Michael's phone. While he swore he was at home that night, GPS placed him near an abandoned quarry 15 miles outside town between 2 and 3 a.m., hours after Dana's phone had gone dark. Even more damning,
His search history revealed phrases that sent chills down investigators' spines. How long before police declare someone dead without a body? Fastest way to dissolve DNA. Do deleted texts stay on iCloud? But the most haunting clue was buried inside Dana's phone. At 10:52 p.m., just minutes before her signal vanished forever, she had sent her best friend a single message. K. Dana never texted like that. She was warm, expressive, full of emojis and long sentences. For her to send just one cold letter was so unnatural that her family immediately knew something was wrong. Detectives agreed. It was likely not Dana typing, but someone trying to impersonate her to buy time. Meanwhile, Michael's behavior with police grew stranger. Instead of pleading for help to find his wife, he focused on protecting himself legally. Within days, he had hired a high-powered attorney and refused to cooperate fully. He changed the locks on their home, restricted access to Dana's personal belongings, and even canceled some of her business accounts, almost as if he already knew she wasn't coming back. Behind the scenes, investigators were quietly building their case. Every lie Michael told, every inconsistency in his timeline, every digital breadcrumb, it all pointed in one direction. But they still lacked the most critical piece: Dana herself. Without a body, could they ever prove what happened? As detectives dug into Michael Whitfield's life, they discovered something chilling. It wasn't just a case of a rocky marriage. It was a ticking financial and emotional time bomb. Michael was drowning in debt. Business ventures had failed, credit cards were maxed, and the couple's once beautiful home was close to foreclosure. Dana, on the other hand, was thriving. Her career in design was taking off. She had secured new contracts, and she had even inherited a small estate from her late aunt. In short, Dana held the financial future of their marriage in her hands. For Michael, that meant one thing: if Dana walked away, she took everything with her. And according to her closest friends, that was exactly what she was planning. Weeks before her disappearance, Dana had quietly met with a divorce attorney. In text messages recovered from her phone, she confided, "I can't live like this anymore. He's manipulative. I'm scared of what he'll do when I leave." Then came the affair. Investigators uncovered evidence that Michael had been involved with another woman, a younger coworker from his firm. At first, she claimed ignorance, insisting she thought Michael was separated. But records told another story. Michael had been wining and dining her with money he didn't have, even promising her a future together once his marriage was officially over. For detectives, it all clicked: the mounting debt, the looming divorce, the new girlfriend, and the loss of financial stability. Michael wasn't just desperate, he was cornered, and Dana's decision to leave may have been the final trigger. But the most damning piece came from a paper trail. Investigators unearthed a life insurance policy taken out by Michael just months earlier. The policy was worth nearly $500,000, payable only if Dana died while still married to him. Prosecutors later argued this was no coincidence. It was premeditation. The picture that emerged was dark and calculated. Michael had motive: money, freedom, and a fresh start with his new lover. Dana had motive to leave: fear, frustration, and betrayal. And somewhere in the middle of that combustible mix, the unthinkable had happened. But motive wasn't enough. Investigators needed hard proof. And soon, thanks to Michael's arrogance and digital mistakes, they would get it.
Detectives knew they had the outline of a motive, but without physical evidence, the case against Michael was circumstantial. That all changed when they re-examined the family SUV. At first glance, the car looked spotless. Too spotless. The mats had been scrubbed, the trunk vacuumed, and even the seats appeared freshly cleaned. But forensic experts knew better. They used luminol, a chemical that glows when it comes into contact with traces of blood. Under the glow of blue light, the trunk lit up like a crime scene. Tiny droplets were found near the latch, smeared streaks across the carpet, and a faint handprint on the inside panel. DNA testing confirmed the worst. Every trace belonged to Dana Whitfield. But Michael's biggest mistake wasn't in the car. It was digital. Investigators pulled his phone records and discovered a chilling timeline. On the night Dana vanished, Michael's phone had been turned off for nearly 4 hours. When it powered back on, it pinged off towers far from home, near a wooded area outside of town. GPS data from his vehicle's navigation system revealed that he had traveled along that same stretch of road. Even more damning, surveillance cameras from a gas station along the route captured Michael's SUV passing by at the exact time his phone was off. As if that wasn't enough, investigators also checked Michael's internet searches. What they found was nothing short of incriminating. Phrases like, "how to clean blood from trunk," "missing spouse investigation," and "life insurance payout timeline." Then came the discovery that tied everything together. During a search of the wooded area where Michael's phone had pinged, cadaver dogs picked up a strong scent. Within hours, they uncovered a shallow grave. Inside was the body of Dana Whitfield, wrapped in a tarp with clear signs of blunt force trauma. The case that had begun as a mystery of a missing wife now turned into something much darker, a cold-blooded murder fueled by greed and betrayal. When confronted with the evidence, Michael showed no emotion. He insisted on his innocence, claiming Dana's death was a tragic accident. But prosecutors weren't buying it, and neither would a jury. The net was closing in, and Michael's carefully constructed web of lies was about to unravel in the harsh light of the courtroom. The trial of Michael Whitfield became one of the most sensational court cases the town had ever seen. For weeks, the courthouse steps were crowded with reporters, true crime bloggers, and curious locals who wanted a glimpse of the man accused of killing his wife. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was tense. On one side sat Dana's grieving family, their faces heavy with sorrow, but determined to see justice served. On the other, Michael appeared calm, even smug at times, dressed neatly in a suit, as though he were the victim of a misunderstanding. But prosecutors wasted no time unraveling that facade. Their opening statement painted Michael as a manipulative husband, a man who led a double life fueled by financial desperation and infidelity. They told the jury this wasn't just a case of passion or accident, it was premeditated murder. The evidence was overwhelming. Jurors were shown photos of the SUV glowing under luminol, maps with GPS data marking Michael's suspicious movements, and the chilling internet searches that revealed a man plotting his wife's disappearance. Each new detail felt like another nail in his coffin. Then came the witnesses. Dana's best friend testified about the confessions Dana had made in private, the late-night phone calls where she admitted she was afraid of Michael, how she believed he had been cheating, and her growing suspicion that he was hiding money problems. Neighbors also took the stand. They recalled seeing Michael loading large trash bags into his vehicle late at night, bags he later claimed were filled with donations. But perhaps the most damning testimony came from a forensic expert. With chilling precision, they explained how blood spatter found in the SUV could only have come from a violent struggle, not an accident, as Michael claimed. The jury listened in silence as science cut through the lies. And then there was the matter of the life insurance policy. Financial records showed that just weeks before Dana's disappearance, Michael had quietly increased the policy's value. If Dana were to die, he stood to collect a life-changing sum of money. The trial stretched on for weeks, each day peeling back another layer of Michael's deception. His double life was laid bare for the world to see, and the once respected husband was now revealed as a man consumed by greed, lies, and betrayal.
After weeks of testimony, heated arguments, and emotional breakdowns, the case of Michael Whitfield reached its final act. The jury had been excused to deliberate, and the courtroom sat in heavy silence as hours ticked by. Dana's family clutched each other's hands, praying for justice, while Michael sat rigid, staring at the floor, the weight of his actions finally visible in his eyes. When the jury returned, the tension was unbearable. Everyone rose as the foreperson read the verdict. On the charge of first-degree murder, guilty. The words hung in the air, echoing through the silent chamber. Gasps filled the room, followed by the sobs of Dana's mother, who wept openly, her tears a mixture of grief and relief. Justice at last had been served. Michael showed little emotion, only a clenched jaw and hollow stare. The judge swiftly delivered his sentence: life in prison without the possibility of parole. The man who once lived a life of wealth and deception would now spend the rest of his days behind concrete walls, stripped of freedom, stripped of power, stripped of the mask he had worn for so long. Outside the courthouse, the public reaction was fierce. Crowds cheered the verdict, true crime outlets labeled the case the betrayal of the century, and the name Michael Whitfield became synonymous with greed, lies, and ultimate downfall. But for Dana's family, the victory was bittersweet. No sentence, no amount of justice could bring her back. What they carried home was not celebration, but the comfort of knowing her story had been heard, her truth uncovered, and her memory defended. In the end, the case of Michael Whitfield was not only about betrayal, but about resilience. The strength of a family who refused to stay silent, the determination of investigators who pieced together the truth, and the enduring lesson that even the most carefully constructed lies cannot hide forever. Michael thought he could fool everyone, but in the end, he fooled only himself. And that is how the story of betrayal, greed, and justice finally came to a close.